So and it's a little bit after 7, it's 7:01. Okay, so I'm going to get started, and this session is being recorded, just so you all know. It will be posted on our YouTube, and we'll post links to it at a later date. And I wanted to, first of all, thank all of our attendees and all of our awesome panelists for joining our first virtual open house for our UConn Hartford Hospital Neurology Adult Residency Program. I'm really excited to share information about our program with all of you, and more importantly, that you can hear from our program coordinator and some of our faculty and awesome residents about our program and what they love about it, and to get you guys excited about it too, because applications are hopefully rolling in, and we'll get to see them in just a couple of weeks to start looking at them. So I just wanted to, thank all of you for being here. I'm really excited that, first of all, that you're interested in being neurologists, and I think that's awesome. I think we all have that in common. We love the brain, we love studying it, we love localization, we love taking care of patients with neurological conditions, and have many interests both within neurology as a field, as well as because we're human beings and we have lots of other parts of our lives that we have a lot of varied interests as well, that we all bring and share with our program. So on that note, just to give you a little bit of an overview, we're going to be presenting some content about our program. A lot of the content is available on our website, so we work hard to update it. We're already in the process, if we haven't already, of updating a lot of the sections this year, including one that I write and update every year, which is frequently asked questions. So hopefully, if you have a question about the program, you'll be able to find an answer to it there. As well as tonight, we're going to go through a lot of sort of key things about our program. Really, what I want you to do, though, is I'm going to try not to do a ton of talking. I'm going to talk for a little bit at the beginning, but then I'm going to turn things over to our residents and faculty to kind of give you a better sense about them and some highlights that they're going to share about the program. So by no means will this be comprehensive. You're not going to learn everything about our program this evening, but hopefully you'll get a good flavor of what we're like. You're going to be hearing from 3 faculty besides myself, and 4 or 5 residents? 4 or 5 residents, I can't tell because I can just see my own little box. And we have 28 residents and over 60 faculty. So you're really just getting like a small sampling of who we are. So, but hopefully you'll get to know us a little bit. And if you're interested, you'll get to know more about us as the season goes on. So the other places that you can follow us, obviously we have our social media, and Katarina will post that at the end. But I encourage you to just be active. We try to stay active on that, post accomplishments, post information. We've been doing these faculty and resident features. So hopefully if you keep following us over time, you'll really learn, you'll get to know us better over the next couple of months as well. A lot of applicants ask me, really, what are you looking for in a resident? So I'm going to get to that right now before we get started. There's not one specific thing that I'm looking for, or that we as a group are looking for when the faculty and I review applications. But we're really looking for really kind, genuine, hardworking, compassionate physicians who will add, based on whatever your passion, your interests are in neurology, that you'll use that to take advantage of all the opportunities we have in our program and really be able to add to and contribute to our program in a significant way while you're learning to be a neurologist. So, our residents are awesome. They're from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of training pathways. They're from all over the US, even Alaska. They're from Canada, from Mexico, and from many different continents. And so our faculty are too. And so I feel like that really adds to such a great environment. And the fact that we all work together really well. Our faculty love teaching, and our residents just are so passionate about what they do and work together really well. That's we're looking for people who will add to that. But there's no one particular characteristic, and our application review is holistic, meaning there's not score cutoffs, there's not a specific thing that is one factor that will count, completely towards whether or not you're invited for an interview or not. The other thing that I'm going to add just at the beginning is just in terms of when you're looking at programs. So what a lot of us are asked during interviews and during this type of event is, are there program changes, right? So So hopefully when you ask that to programs, they'll have a lot to talk about, because all programs and all organizations always need to change, right? So everything, you know, our healthcare landscape is changing, how we take care of patients is changing. There's like tons of stuff going on all the time. So really the key thing is, does the program you're looking at have an effective and systematic way of implementing change? And what is the resident's role in that, right? So, you know, and so we'll talk about that a little bit tonight as well, but I think that's really important, is that residents are involved and are able to give key input into decisions and changes made in their program. So on that note, we're going to move to the next slide. And I'm just going to give a little bit of the program overview slide. So we have 7 residents per year. We're a categorical program. We recently went from 5 per year to 7, and that's been amazing for our schedule and just sort of the ability to be flexible with our program. So our 2 primary rotation sites, and it's a little interesting, some programs you'll look at will really just have one main academic center or one main hospital that you're working at. Our program has 2. So we have 2 main rotation sites. One is at Hartford Hospital. So Hartford Hospital is the primary teaching hospital for the UConn programs. It's a huge hospital. It's in downtown Hartford. It has over 900 beds. It's a comprehensive stroke center. We now have level 4 NAC surgical epilepsy center, where we're doing like all the different kinds of like stereo EEG and all the different kinds of epilepsy surgery. And we just get transfers all the time. The stroke center is, you know, super busy. They're doing clot retrievals and TPA like all day long. And our residents get to see like a great variety of cases when they're working there. It's such a huge hospital that we do have multiple services there. So we have a neuro ICU, we have inpatient services, we have an EMU service, we have consult service. So we have, you know, it's a lot of big teaching teams there. And you'll hear a little bit more about it, but we do have a lot of support from our institution there. And so we have been able to hire a lot of advanced practice APRNs and PAs to split off an inpatient stroke service that's mainly staffed by the advanced practice providers. So that's really helped us a lot. So I wanted to mention that because that really is important for our residents' education. The other thing is that they have a lot of flexible elective time in all 3 years of the program. So that really helps us for them to get exposures to all of the subspecialties, because they need to, if they are going to choose a fellowship, they need time to do that. And also to kind of give them time to sort of develop their own, you know, learning plans and really, you know, be able to see which areas they need to have more time in before they graduate and feel comfortable as independent practicing neurologists. So that's, you know, that's sort of Hartford Hospital, and at UConn, which is the other main teaching site. It's a really great, you know, sort of variety having both, because UConn, the hospital, is much smaller, but it is a tertiary care center, and it's a consult only service. So our residents are working sort of in cooperation with the medicine teams to take care of stroke, TIA, seizure patients, sort of as a consultant neurologist for a hospital, which is the situation that you would be in as a neurologist practicing, you know, at a community hospital, even though it's an academic hospital that they're working in. So I think that gives a really sort of good variety between 2 different inpatient healthcare settings that sort of run a little bit differently, but altogether give them a lot of exposure. We have a lot of faculty and peer mentoring. You'll hear a little bit more about that from our residents when we go through the presentation, but they are really well supported. You know, part of the reason why I think categorical programs, you know, the system works a little bit better is because you're part of our program from day one. So we can really incorporate our PGY1s into our department, into our curriculum, into our mentoring programs, and really kind of, even though they're spending a lot of the time in the medicine rotations, that we're really able to sort of be involved in their learning from the get-go. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so the pandemic, right? So since the beginning, so I think this picture is probably from like early 2020. So this is probably, I think it's from like March or April. And that was the time that in Connecticut, we had the most patients with COVID. I think at Hartford Hospital, we peaked at around 250 patients. And then, you know, this past year, I know other parts of the country are really having a hard time right now. Connecticut, fortunately, is very highly vaccinated, and we're vaccinated pretty early on. So, we're keeping our fingers crossed, but we haven't, we've been holding steady around 30 to 40 patients with COVID at Hartford Hospital over the past month or so. So, hopefully we'll, I think just in terms of the institution, both at UConn and Hartford Healthcare, as well as sort of all of our priorities to keep our trainees safe, has really resulted in our residents feeling very comfortable working in the hospital, even though, we are seeing all different patients across the emergency department and the ICUs, that, we've really prioritized the safety of our healthcare professionals and our residents. So next slide. So the next thing I just wanted to mention again, which I think I did in the first couple of minutes, is just the diversity of our program. It's really sort of amazing to me. And that's one of the things that I value most in my job and being a program director is really, my faculty and resident colleagues, and just what an amazing group of people they are. And they're from lots of different places and, really learning more about everybody else and, working with everybody else very closely over 4 years. I think it's really awesome to kind of, have people from all different walks of life. And that's really important for our patient care as well. Our patients are from many backgrounds as well. And so it's important that, that our composition sort of reflects theirs as well. So I think, that's something that we really value in our program and across both UConn and Hartford Healthcare. So our next slide, I have one more and then I'll turn it over to the panel. So one of the things that I love about being at Hartford Hospital and at UConn is that many of our residents who we know and get to love come back as faculty. So you're going to notice that some of the faces on this slide look familiar in our panel tonight, because our faculty panelists were all previous residents at some point in the last few years, and they've come back as faculty. So that's something I think that really speaks a lot for our program. A lot of the residents either stay for fellowship and then as faculty, or they'll go somewhere else for fellowship and then are hired back on as faculty. So we've had the pleasure of having a lot of and this is not all of them, this is just some of them, but we've had a ton of our faculty who have trained in our program, as well as a lot of the neurologists around the state of Connecticut have trained in our program as well. So it's great in terms of referrals and things like that. We know a lot of the neurologists practicing around the state. So I would say the majority of our graduates do pursue fellowships. Many of them go into academics, but it's really a variety in terms of what they do later in terms of hospital practice, hospitalist, private practice. It's kind of a real variety once they finish fellowship, but really a lot of them are either coming back to one of our teaching programs or pursuing an academic career or a faculty position out of state. So on that note, I think I'm going to stop talking because I really want the panelists to do a lot of the talking for the rest of the hour so they can, so that all of you can get to know them. So I'm going to turn it over to our faculty and resident panelists to first introduce themselves and talk a little bit, and then go through the rest of the presentation. Thanks.
So we're going to introduce the panelists. They're going to say who they are and give, one brief statement about why they chose UConn Neurology. And we'll start off with Dr. Imperioli.
Hey everyone, good evening. I'm Matt Imperioli and one of the attending neurologists, as you see, former graduate, and my subspecialty neurology is neuromuscular disease. So the reason I came back and half of my residency class came back to join faculty was I think the relationships that I formed with the co-residents as well as the other attendings I work with. Like Dr. Schuyler mentioned, I felt there was like a strong mentorship program. So when I was, just starting my practice, I wanted to go somewhere where I continue to, collaborate with other colleagues and learn from the senior attending. So it drew me back to UConn.
Next, we'll have Dr. Eugene.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Maria Eugene. I'm a neurologist and epileptologist. I'm primarily based out at UConn, but I too am a proud graduate of this program. What I really love, among many things, about UConn Neurology as it relates to education, there is a big learner-centered focus where we do care about what our residents think. We do care a lot about what our residents are learning. And I was a resident and then I flipped to an attending about 10 years ago, but on the attending side, I can assure you that the faculty member are very keen on making sure that education is taken care of appropriately, and so that's one of the things I really enjoy about UConn Neurology. The relationships you forge during residency are amazing. I have 2 young boys and things are really busy, but the stuff I see that these residents are doing on their social time, I would love to join. I haven't been invited yet, but nonetheless, I could tell you they're doing a lot of fun stuff. And so you build a lot of strong relationships. I still send text messages to my residents, my co-residents 10 years ago. The other thing I'll say is that I've seen the program grow by leaps and bounds, all for the better over the last 10 years, almost to the extent, that I would consider doing residency again. So, so it's a good time to be here.
Dr. Zarya.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Karanther Zarya. I did my residency at UConn and I finished my stroke fellowship recently at Yale. I came back to Hartford Healthcare as a vascular neurologist. I'll actually answer both questions in terms of, what made me choose UConn as a residency program as well and kind of come back as an attending. And during my interview process, when I actually interviewed at UConn, I think this was the program where I really just kind of got the sense of, the people, the culture, and really kind of clicked right from the get-go when I met the residents for the pre-interview dinner all the way through meeting all the faculty members. Once I finished my residency and fellowship, the big decision for me to come back was I think this was a perfect balance for me in terms of clinical practice with the diversity of the cases that we have in our comprehensive stroke center, the opportunity for clinical research, and also be involved with education and mentoring with the residency program. I feel this is just a great place for all of that.
And Tina.
I didn't see my name there. Hi, I'm Tina Lunder. I'm the program coordinator here. I've been the coordinator in neurology since 2015, so it's been quite a few years. And I've gone through a lot of these interview seasons with you guys. So I know how it is, and I know how to kind of guide you through it. So I hope to be able to do that. A little later, I'm going to be sharing a slide about what your interview days will look like with us. We have a couple of activities we invite you to, and along with the interview. So I will be speaking with you soon about that as well.
Dr. Emerson.
I am Dennis and Emerson. I'm one of the PGY4 residents. Choosing neurology was a pretty easy choice for me. I think you can kind of see by the way we all get along that you can feel this intangible it quality that's there, where it just makes it easy to have a conversation, and the collegiality from resident to med student to attending that exists. And I kind of felt that at the resident dinner, and that was what was harped on rather than the schedule and all the other things. People focused on personalities and how you fit into the program rather than how the call schedule is and whatnot, which is pretty good. And I can say why I chose neurology again, because I'm coming back to be the stroke fellow here, and it was for all of those reasons. And I made some of the best friends I've ever had at this program, and I think it comes from the top down to create an environment where you can make friends and with the people you work with. So I would tell my past self that I would pick UConn again.
Dr. Colar.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Colar, one of the third-year residents, and probably going to sound like a broken record here. I think everyone's done a really good job of summing up what the big draw here is, but I really do think that the culture and the collegiality between residents and attendings, between residents amongst themselves, between residents and medical students, there's just kind of this culture of understanding about really valuing people as human beings, and then all kind of coming together around our shared interests in medicine and in neurology, but really being able to interact with people on sort of an even playing field, that we're all colleagues, we're all learning together, and by working together, we're all enhancing our understanding of the world and neurology, and all becoming better for it. And I think that's really sort of core and fundamental to how this program works, and why you can see all of us so excited to talk about it here.
Dr. Gupta?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shreya, one of the PGY2s. Still getting my feet wet in neurology, but I'm really excited to take a dive. And I think I resonate with everyone when they say it's very collegial, and that's what attracts everyone to this program, that it's really awesome and easy to talk to everyone, and the diversity of cases that we have, that's why I'm really excited to continue with my PGY2 and see a lot more cases. But that was the most important reason, I think, and that's why everyone keeps saying the same thing, because we do make really good friends with each other.
And I'm Katarina Badilan on the PGY4 along with Dr. Emerson. I think everybody's really said the same thing, but the most important for me was that UConn was very IMG friendly. I never felt, the stigma of being an IMG. Everybody was looked at as an equal, and that was one of the choices. That was one of my choices for choosing UConn. So I think that we're going to go ahead with the presentation, starting with Dr. Gupta.
So I'm just gonna basically run through what your PGY1 is gonna look like, as most of it is spent doing internal medicine. And that is one of the very important aspects, because when you do become a neurologist, you need to know how to manage all their medical issues as well, apart from the neurology. You do get about, if I break down all of those weeks in internal medicine, about inpatient or floors, that are about 20 weeks of inpatient service that you do. You do get one block of neurology that is as an elective. You get your weekends, but it's kind of divided as 2 weeks of consults, 2 weeks of inpatients, just to kind of get you the idea of what a neurology service looks like. You do have about 4 weeks of ambulatory service, and how our clinic, neurology clinic, works. And it's one of the most important features of our program as well, that we do start your neurology continuity clinic in PGY1, and that's a half day, 1 day of the week, and you do start that as soon as you start your first month as PGY1. And as Dr. Schuyler was mentioning, changes, thing everyone is so receptive of all the feedback. And what we recently did was we added a neuro ICU block amongst all those 12 weeks. So 4 weeks you do a neuro ICU within your PGY1. So you'll get more of an idea of what the neurocritical emergencies are. And the other 2 would be your medical ICUs. That would be a total of 8 weeks. We do have 4 weeks of electives, and basically you get to choose what kind of electives you want to do, and what kind of things you want to do, including mostly people choose radiology, rheumatology, depending on what their interests are, or what they want to do as you're pursuing their neurology as well. And then the most exciting part, I would say, of these weeks is your last block of PGY1, which is our boot camp. That is kind of your initiation block in neurology, where we get to know what kind of stuff we're going to do, and then I'll talk about as the next slide goes. But just other few things would be, there is a PPD. That is kind of your resident wellness thing, and that's 1 half day in the morning, almost every month or 2 months, and you get to know your IM residents more collegially. And you do few of my very good friends are from IM, and you do maintain those friendships, I think, lifelong. And talking about the boot camp, so that's your block 13 before you start your PGY2. And mostly it's divided into an AM and PM sessions. AM, you basically get like lecture and some group learning, and then there are like all designated areas where you go, like you get training for LPs, brain death exams. So like almost every like basic skill is covered just to get you initiated. And in the evenings, so like you kind of get divided into subspecialty clinics, or maybe you shadow like an inpatient person or consult person, just to get an idea as to like how your next 3 years are going to look like. And you do get like team building exercises, like simulation codes, as in stroke codes, and like you get different scenarios, and like, they're like really fun to like go on with. And that's, I think, one of my best blocks of PGY1 so far.
I'm going to take you through the schedule very quickly. If you look at a neurology block schedule across many programs, they're going to look very similar to you. So I'm going to focus on what's special about ours. These are in weeks, not in months, so you won't spend 12 years here. But the bulk of your PGY2 is going to be doing inpatient wards and consult service. And that's really going to get your inpatient skills up to par. And scattered in there, you're going to get the chance to dip your toe into the neurocritical care unit. Our ambulatory subspecialty clinics takes you across every subspecialty. We've got every possible subspecialty across neurology that you can see if you like before you start deciding about your fellowship opportunities. Special in our program is that, in the beginning, you do a neuroradiology rotation combined with EEG, which is a chance for you to get front loaded with a little bit of that information before you delve into that in your PGY 3 year. And you get the opportunity to do neuro IR with some great neurointervention folks. Your PGY 3 year will fill the gaps of the outpatient and the neurophysiology aspects. You're going to spend quite a bit of time doing EEGs and EMGs, and you have incredible mentors who will definitely boost your skills in that category. And you're going to do 12 weeks with an incredible pediatric neurology department. They're all great attendings, and you'll learn an incredible amount from them. As you filter into your PGY 4 year, where we all have chief responsibilities of some sort, we come back onto the service in more of a senior role, which we delved into shortly at the end of PGY 3, but we start taking that on as our primary role and mentor our PGY 2 residents, while at the same time doing neuro rehabilitation, psychiatry, and then doing neuropathology, which are all, in addition to for the board, it's just important for rounding out your neurology education. I can go to the next slide. And this is probably the most important slide for most of you, because these are just gonna sound like names to you, but the day float is basically the MVP of the service at any given moment. When they basically, if you notice, they go from 12 to 10, and they cross every change of shift, and they make sure that everybody gets what they need to do done in time and get to go home and live their life. And everybody loves when the day float person comes. And I think this is unique to our program and an integral part of the program that I couldn't do without. Our buddy night float program was incredible. I actually was with Dr. Zarya when I was in PGY2, and getting the chance to have a senior resident guide you through how to handle the hospital at night really made me a different person. And I think it gave me the opportunity to learn how to teach, the future PGY2s as well. Our long calls, really is long call. It goes it's about 3 hours from 5 to 8 p.m. And we do have a night float system. So once your nights are done, your nights are done. Home call at UConn is another unique experience where you get the chance to experience what an attending may experience, getting called at night from the ED, running cases with you, and just a different experience than being in the hospital at any given moment and trying to triage a case. We get early outpatient and elective exposure, so whatever you like, you'll get to see it, and know whether you want to make that decision before you pick a specialty, whether you pick one at all. And I think across the board, the schedule itself is conducive to you deciding what you want to do in the future, and definitely manageable to have a life.
All right, so I'm just going to very briefly kind of touch on the educational aspects of the program. So our program is sort of, there's a lot of great clinical exposure, a lot of great working hands-on with attendings and co-residents, but there's also a very sort of strong component of didactic learning. So when you're on the service, we have daily morning reports with senior neurologists with tons of clinical experience, who walk you through cases about how to really think as a neurologist, how to interpret pertinent imaging studies and laboratory studies. So you get that on a daily basis, especially in your second year when you're really kind of trying to onboard all this knowledge. You're getting a ton of bedside rounding teaching experience from a really diverse breadth of faculty members representing all sorts of neurologic subspecialties. There are lectures every few weeks by the neurohospitalists, so neurologists who work exclusively in the hospital, kind of sharing with you unique cases and kind of the pathology that everyone's been talking about that's pretty unique to a large tertiary care center. We do have weekly didactic sessions on Tuesday afternoons, and this is now fully protected lecture time. So we have the attending neurologists, as well as our advanced practice provider colleagues from the vascular neurology team, helping to offload a lot of the inpatient responsibilities so that we can really actually focus in on dedicated lecture time, which will kind of show a listing in a moment of sort of all the various lecture series that we have as a part of that. But you really don't have to worry about missing out on those or being plagued by other pressing matters, because you'll have help with that work, so you can really focus on that. And that is where that second bullet comes in. And then of course, faculty who are really dedicated to teaching, who want to mentor you, who want to be your colleagues and learn with you, but who really want to take a vested interest in your development as a neurologist. And we can go to that next slide. Just to kind of show, I won't read you all of these things, but we're talking about on the left side of the screen here, you can see the clinical neurology conferences would be the didactic learning series. And you can see that, pretty much every neurologic subspecialty is listed there, among others, including some highlights: Journal Club, which is resident run with help of the attendings to get your feet wet in interpreting pertinent neurologic literature. Chairman's rounds, where we work with our chairman, Dr. Greenfield from UConn, working through a case and understanding sort of his clinical reasoning and pearls, working through a case that he has no prior exposure to, as well as then some additional simulation sessions similar to the boot camp to make sure we're all developing our skills and pertinent inpatient abilities as neurologists. In addition to all of that, Thursdays, we have a grand round series that runs from the fall into the early summer months, which has a resident component with a case presentation, as well as then a variety of guest speakers from all over the country and the world presenting on topics across the spectrum there. We also have inpatient neuroradiology conferences, so dedicated radiologists who subspecialize in neuroanatomy are able to walk us through complicated cases and walk us through their differentials from the radiographic perspective, which is a really great opportunity as well. And a lecture series is part of our continuity clinic. So monthly, we're getting sort of an opportunity to approach literature that is germane to the outpatient care of neurologic disease, among many others. So really a lot of opportunities, both structured and a few groups that meet sort of on a less structured basis as well for other subspecialty interests. So really a lot of opportunities for didactic learning on top of everything you're getting clinically. And we can go to the next.
Dr. Zarya is just going to briefly talk about the continuity clinic and then research.
So I think Shreya talked to you guys a bit about the clinic, but you guys actually start neurology clinic right from the PGY1, which is kind of great experience. You're kind of getting outpatient neurology exposure, which is usually a half day that's dedicated through the week as your assigned clinic day. And below that, you actually have some of the pictures for our medical assistants and nurses from the clinic at UConn, which is kind of a great environment to kind of sharpen your skills in terms of diverse variety of outpatient neurology cases that you kind of encounter. Go to the next slide. As far as research goes, and I can kind of speak to this both from my experience as a resident and kind of what we're striving now on the other side as an attending as well. We've always had residents who have had great interest in pursuing research, and there's been a lot of opportunities to do that. And I feel that really helps you as a resident kind of get into your posters and presentations at the national meetings. Me personally, I went to the ISC. I was lucky to go to Hawaii for that meeting. We live in a different COVID world now, obviously, but I think a lot of my classmates, all of us had more than 10 posters throughout residency, and on an average, we're getting up to 30 abstracts submitted to all these major meetings, which is very helpful as you kind of start working along what your interests are later in the career as well, but also kind of help make your CV and your overall profile as you start preparing applications for fellowship and kind of subspecialty training. The program pays for the conferences and both your travels and registration, which is kind of great as a resident. At Hartford Hospital, we are involved in 8 national trials as far as stroke goes, and we are part of the StrokeNet organization, which involves 4 major centers throughout the Northeast. And that gives a lot of opportunities for our residents and fellows to kind of continue working on their interest in terms of research opportunities.
So I'm going to discuss a little bit about teaching opportunities. The other role I have relates to being the neurology clerkship director. So in terms of the clerkship, the students' rotation is about 4 weeks in duration. They have a primary clinical home, and there are about 6 to 7 sites that they rotate, that they can rotate through. At Hartford Hospital and UConn, those are the sites where they interact with our residents. And as far as formal education opportunities, the students have dedicated conference time that they're pulled out for. So we do welcome our residents' participation in teaching those conferences. Reputably, the students, we get evaluations after every rotation. I have to sign off on them, and virtually, I have not seen any negative comments come through about our residents. So the students so appreciate and understand the time that the residents dedicate to teaching them. They do realize it can be time consuming, and so, but nonetheless, our residents have done a really great job with that. Promulgating this concept of teaching and education, which is a big part of our culture. So I'm very proud about that. We have a medical student chief, and that chief resident serves as a conduit between the residents, faculty members, and myself. So any student-related concern or issue or project goes through that particular chief resident. Other things highlighted on the slide itself, there's a medical student research program that was started by one of our senior residents last year. That's been a pretty pretty successful program. I've had students come up to me after orientation on the first day of the rotation and ask about that particular program. We have a student interest group in neurology as well, and I always welcome resident input. The students, as I said, feel very close to the residents. Aside from age and training time, they do appreciate the time that that the residents, in addition to the attending, spend teaching them. Informal teaching opportunities, as my grandma used to say, you're always getting watched, and so the students do also observe our residents' behavior, which is often just absolutely professional. So they emulate residents in that sense, and they also obviously observe as you're doing the exam, as you're taking history. But aside from that, there's opportunities for bedside teaching. We have our senior residents even do observed exams of the students. So it's really built in. It's hard not to be incorporated as far as the teaching opportunities that relate to the resident interaction with medical students. There are also internal medicine and psychiatry residents that rotate with us, and therein lie additional opportunities for education. And those residents who are not neurology residents really look to mentorship and guidance from the senior neurology residents on service. Next slide.
So Dr. Imperioli is just going to talk about resident wellness and some fellowship opportunities we have over here.
All right, so resident wellness. So every year there's a wellness chief that helps coordinate this. And as we already mentioned, there's a mentorship program. So all the residents in their first year of the neurology residency will pick a attending who they want to be a mentor, either someone in the same subspecialty or who maybe has similar research interests, to help them guide them to the research projects or the application projects or fellowship or just overall career development. The graduate medical education office at UConn, there's money for $2,000 that's for activities like to use for books and travel, things like that. There's GME sponsored events like happy hours, and there's also just resident ones that are through the residency. There's in the normal Tuesday afternoon didactic sessions, there's wellness meetings and talks during the lectures, and there's the monthly meeting with Dr. Schuyler to kind of go over any issues or solve any problems that have developed. We just had at UConn one of our summer parties that was on hold for a while with COVID and all, but typically there have been kind of welcome events over the summer for the new residents and faculty that join the program. There's typically holiday parties at the end of the year as well, and different other events, as the pandemic, prior to pandemic, and now as kind of we're growing. And in every year at the end, there's graduation, which we, has been held at a restaurant. Everyone's gotten together. Here's some of the pictures. At least one towards the left is from graduation, and then some other pictures Dr. Schuyler can mention with her outside skills.
I think this slide was put in the talk last year to embarrass me, and it surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
It still embarrasses me a little bit, but yeah, that's a hobby of mine. I do ballroom dancing in competitions sort of the last couple of years. And then the picture that's all the way on the right is just a picture of my family. That's my two kids. The one that looks really big because he's standing on a step is actually taller than that, even off a step now. He's like 6'4", like in the past year. So, time flies.
So outside of residency or outside of work as a faculty member, you can have lives outside of work, and there's lots of things to do in Connecticut, from the mix of like small cities like Hartford, which has theaters and sporting events, things like that. There's hiking and all the outdoor activities, snowboarding, skiing into the winter, and you can go kayaking or tubing in the summer, and then all the usual type of things that around shopping and all. So over the past few years, the number of fellowships have grown at UConn. It's exponential growth. So there's vascular neurology fellowship, and the program director is Dr. New. I'm the program director for the neuromuscular fellowship, neuromuscular EMG fellowship. And there's a neurointerventional fellowship for IR, which several of our graduates have done over the recent years. Fairly new in the last few years is the development of the headache fellowship. Program director is Dr. Grossberg. And then the movements disorder fellowship with the program director is Dr. DeMarcata. And recently the sports neurology fellowship headed by Dr. Alessi LaRosa, one of the also other graduates for the programs too. And then epilepsy and critical care are also in the development to come out soon as well.
Okay, so I know everyone's probably anxious to get to the Q&A. So I'm just going to quickly go over what your interviews will kind of look like, what the progression is, should you decide to interview with us. We do offer 2 time slots for interviews. We offer Wednesday evening and Thursday morning. This allows us to accommodate a larger variety of time zones, especially over Zoom. You're not going to be traveling, so it's kind of nice that you can have your choice of that. Each interview week, we invite you to 2 events. One is the Wednesday night social hour, and that's over Zoom with a bunch of our residents. You can kind of get to see how they interact and act in a group. And then this year, you're also going to be doing smaller breakout rooms. So you should be able to get into smaller groups, and that way you can really make sure your questions are getting answered and you kind of get a little more of, a smaller experience with 1 or 2 residents. The other thing we invite you to is Thursday morning grand rounds, which Ryan talked about. That's a 30-minute resident case presentation and the 60-minute grand rounds, either given by one of our faculty or an invited guest speaker. And then for the interviews, as I said, there are 2 time zones, two time slots. And it would either be Wednesday night before social hour, or you can do social hour, grand rounds, and then do your interviews Thursday after the grand rounds. And basically what that entails is it's a program overview, similar to what we did today with a resident and Dr. Schuyler. And then you would have 3 to 4 15-minute interviews with Dr. Schuyler and other faculty. And we do have the resident who gives the program overview stay with us. So that way, if you have a break in between your interviews, you actually have more time with the resident if you have any more questions. Sometimes, an interview will spark another question, and that way you have a resident right there to keep you company and answer anything you might have. And I just want to say I know everyone was talking about why UConn before. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of candidates at this point and gone through so many interviews. And I will say most people start out very nervous before the first interview. And then once they get out of the first one, they're completely relaxed. We have great faculty, great residents. I think you're going to find that you really see the camaraderie when you do visit us virtually. And
So, at this time, we do have a couple of minutes to open it up to everybody. What I do want to go around, just so we can end on a high note, is I'd like to go around the panelists and have them give sort of one last piece of advice. Now as we go off into the application season, what wisdom could they impart? And if you guys do have any questions, please feel free to type it in the chat right now so we can answer it, try to address it in the next 10 minutes. So we can, as before, start with Dr. Imperioli. Any last piece of advice for our potential applicants?
I think that when you go through the interview season, definitely take notes about what you liked about each program, the advantages, disadvantages, things you didn't like, overall feeling. I think because when you start in October and by the time you make your rank list, you may kind of forget about some of the programs you went to earlier. They may kind of all blend together. So I think having a kind of a detailed little summary for each program, I think, is helpful when you're making that rank list.
Dr. Eugene, any advice?
Hi, everybody. So I have sort of the tried and true, being yourself is important. We do want to see the real you, and we're interested to learn about the applicants in terms of their interests as far as their clinical interests, their research interests, and what they like to do for fun. So don't hesitate to answer those questions. I agree with Dr. Imperioli, having notes about the different programs is important. And this will sound quirky, but you have to also kind of check out how you feel when you see how the residents interact, how people are interacting. And I think you do still get a pretty good feel for that, although it's a virtual format.
Dr. Zarya?
Yeah, I'll echo a little what Dr. Imperioli and Dr. Eugene said, but I think the the whole match process through the interviews it is challenging for all the residents because there's a lot of uncertainty about the process. I think it really helps to be yourself in terms of looking things through your lens, not what others tell you in terms of, hey, these are the X, Y, and Z things that you absolutely need to do. I don't think there's anything like that. As you go through the interview trail, I think it's important to kind of find what is a good match for you. And besides, your scores and achievements and your CVs, I think the programs really want to know you, who you are as a person. And I think that does matter a lot, no matter where you end up for your residency, because these are 4 years that are going to be long and hard. But what gets you through that is, what kind of values you hold, what kind of character you have, and just what kind of person you are, and that helps you build all your relationships. I think this is the time to kind of look hard for that. And as you go through the process, I think it really comes down to talking to people in the interviews and getting a sense of, this is where I really fit the best.
Tina, any advice from the program coordinator's perspective?
Dr. Imperioli stole mine. I was going to say, the one thing I can say also, it's a very long season, and you're going to be doing interviews probably in November all the way through to January. And we can't emphasize enough how much you'll want those notes when it comes to February, because especially since you won't have those place cues, you'll probably be in 1 or 2 places on Zoom, so you won't really have those cues. So I think really can't be emphasized enough to keep your notes so that you can go over and remember. You don't want to forget what happened in November, because that may be your program. So that's what I would say.
Dr. Emerson?
Try not to repeat the things that everyone has said before. What I would say is don't be afraid to ask questions. If you think to yourself, maybe they won't like me if I ask this question or that question. If you're thinking that way at your interview, that's probably not the place you want to be. And so you want to be at the place where you feel comfortable and you're able to be yourself and grow rather than feel stifled and feel like you're fitting yourself into someone else's mold. So make sure you ask multiple questions, make sure it's where you want to go. 4 years is a long time. And if you stay for fellowship, it could be a lot longer. So you want to be happy where you are.
Dr. Colar?
Yeah, I would agree with Dr. Emerson and Dr. Zarya. I would say, yeah, being yourself, being true to yourself, and allowing the people you're interviewing with, residents, faculty, to also be very honest with you as well. And if you are both sort of having that honest back and forth, I think you'll both be able to tell how well you mesh and how well you both are sort of able to appreciate what the other's bringing to the table. Like everyone said, you'll be in this program or any of these programs for 4 years. So you really want to make sure that it's a place you feel comfortable and a place you feel like you can thrive. And so, don't ignore, an instinct one way or another, about any part of your experience. You use it all to really sort of encapsulate your opinion going forward.
And Dr. Gupta?
I think like everyone kind of covered most of everything, but I know like interview season is really stressful. So try to relax in between, enjoy those interviews, and like go with your instincts. Like usually they won't lead you wrong. Like what place matches your vibe, you feel like, yeah, like this is it. So like go with that and just take a breath and kind of go with the flow, I would say too.
All right, everybody's coming up with great questions in the chat. One that came up twice is what's it like living in Hartford? And also one that's out of state. I think I can choose that one. I'm initially from New York, New Jersey, and I moved to Hartford, which isn't too far away, but it's close enough to family. And I really like living in Connecticut. You have a lot more room than you do in New York. Cost of living is a lot lower than it is in New York, and at least New Jersey, close to the city. And everybody's really nice. People say thank you. And the attendings, are really nice. The residents are super helpful. I remember there was one year, one of our interns needed a place to stay because they came 2 weeks early, and one of our residents said, no problem, stay at my apartment. We're all really friendly here. If you're an outdoorsy person, this area is definitely for you. Lots of things to do outdoors and also indoors. They have a lot of rock climbing, bouldering. I love karaoke. We do karaoke on a regular basis. Dr. Eugene, you are invited anytime. Anytime you'd like to come over and do karaoke, you're more than welcome.
Good to know. I was waiting for a formal invitation. I just see the pictures that look like.
But panelists, please feel free if you see a question, you know, that you'd like to answer, feel free to answer it either in the chat or out loud. But
yeah, I can take a couple of them quick. I'll try to go because I know we're getting close to 8 too. There was a question I saw that Dr. Zarya answered too about encouraging, you know, taking advantage of what social media has to offer. And I think that's a great idea. I think if you don't want to be like having a big presence though on Twitter, that's fine. Like that's not going to affect whether or not you're selected for interviews or anything like that. But I think there are a lot of great resources out there. I know the AAN just did a couple of webinars with some of the folks that have been doing a lot of the Twitter stuff to kind of teach medical students and applicants and med students about how to use Twitter to access neurology resources. So I would recommend that if you get a chance. Connecticut is awesome. So I've been program director for 12 years, I think. I don't know. I moved here in 2009. I went to college around here too. I went to Wesleyan, which is about 20 minutes away. And I'm from Southeastern Massachusetts, like near the ocean. And I love it here. I've raised my kids here. We love the schools. It's pretty. There's farmers markets, but there's a ton of good restaurants. It's like, if you're looking to live in New York City, it's not New York City. So, but you know, so it just kind of depends on what kind of environment you want to live in. You know, I have a backyard and a stream and stuff like back there. I live in West Hartford. It's sort of more suburby. If you live in Hartford itself, there's more apartment buildings. A lot of the residents live in the same kind of the same few apartment complexes. So a lot of their neighbors are their co-residents or residents in other programs, and a lot of them love that too. A few of the questions were about research and community and other opportunities. I just want to emphasize that between Hartford Healthcare, which is a huge healthcare system that kind of covers half the state of Connecticut, and UConn, which is the state university with the medical school and nursing school, grad school, all that stuff, like there are tons of opportunities. So we have a lot within neurology in terms of research opportunities. We do a ton. We have very well organized curriculum in patient safety, quality improvement. Everyone does projects. Everyone does scholarly projects. There's like a wide range of what you can do. But, you know, even if it's something that we don't have within the neurology department, if it's something you're interested in, there's probably a way to find other mentorship or resources outside of the department itself, just because we have a big medical school and a huge healthcare system. So there's a ton going on, a lot of opportunities to take advantage of. In terms of global opportunities, unfortunately, COVID has put a hold on that, but there are several opportunities that you can access via our program. The most direct one is going to Haiti. So we have several of our faculty that have been very involved in doing outreach and practicing neurology in Haiti. Dr. Tony Alessi and both his daughters who are on faculty, so Catherine and Stephanie, so have gone a bunch of times and had a plan to have a global rotation, and then the pandemic hit. We also have connections with several other programs that are sort of via other institutions as well. So I think, you know, just in terms of, you know, other research opportunities, to be honest, most of our residents are not involved in basic science like lab work. It's harder to do that as a resident just because of the way that clinical schedules are during residency training. So I will have to say that the majority of the research that goes on are within sort of clinical research, and there are many kinds of clinical research, also through QI, medical education projects, patient safety projects. Like there's just a ton of opportunities. But the majority are not sort of bench like wet lab kind of stuff. Let's see. I think hopefully I got to a lot of those questions, but you know, feel free to save them up too and come back next week. I think just in terms of the content next week, we are going to go through a similar presentation. We are going to have a slightly different group of panelists. I know I'll still be there, but and Tina, but I think we have a little bit of different residents and faculty that will be rotating through as panelists, and you know, just to get some more opinions. So it'll be a slightly different session, I think. So hopefully, if you think of a question like 5 minutes after we end, come back and bring it next week if you can come to our second session. So. I'm looking through the questions.
I think we've pretty much answered everything.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. But yeah, I just wanted to thank so much to Katarina for organizing our panel this evening. You did a great job. Also, thank you to all of our faculty presenters who, if you do end up interviewing with us, you very well may see, because Dr. Eugene and Dr. Imperioli and Dr. Zarya will all be helping with our applicant interviews this year. And certainly Tina, who's sort of the face of our program, to the applicants as the season progresses. So good luck to all of you. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I really appreciate your time. I wish you all the best of luck in selecting which programs may be the right ones for you, and kind of, I hope it's not a stressful, anxiety-ridden time. I hope that you enjoy it. Like, this is really an opportunity for you to meet lots of neurologists, meet residents, like learn a lot from other people. And so I would look at it as sort of like, sort of an exciting time that you can really kind of meet all of these people. And neurology is a pretty small community. So, these might be people that you're meeting on your interviews, even if you don't end up at the same programs. These are people you may get to know sort of as colleagues in the future, or as mentors, or, I think it's just, a really sort of exciting next step. So I wish you all the best of luck with that. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Best of luck,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.